Sitting around Vulcan's workbench in the depths of her lair, two genomes brainstormed around a sketch. For the past hour, they had struggled to solve one of the world's most important questions. Some would say, the only question worth answering. How many guns could you fit into one power armor? It'll be better with rocket launchers, Ryan said, discussing his armor's design. Vulcan had chosen a design that fit the courier's body rather than an enormous mech. An exoskeleton rather than a tank. Two hidden switchblades below the arms, a big chest blaster, mounted turrets. The goal is to increase your power, not blow up half of Rome, Jasmine told him with a grin. Personally, I can settle for the Dynamis HQ. In that case, you will need a bigger laser. Vulcan scribbled on the design. Nuclear-powered. Let's call it the Chernobyl, Ryan said with a deadpan face. You think some of their genomes might survive it? Yes, but they will become radioactive. If the laser doesn't kill them, cancer will. Ryan looked at Jasmine with absolute respect. So cruel, it becomes art. I know, she replied. Now that I think of it, I could actually design a cancer ray. That would be fucking nasty. It was such a fun date, spending quality time with his girlfriend designing weapons of mass destruction. Then again, the courier had spent most of the weekend at Jasmine's place, so the two had grown more familiar with each other. Jamie was too busy dealing with his new promotion, and while Dynamis hadn't yet delivered on its promised retaliations, Vulcan had all but ordered Ryan to lay low for a while. Well, as best as someone like the courier could. If your theory is correct and all true genomes produce a red flux variant, then it should be possible to contain this hypothetical energy, even if we can't observe it. Jasmine brainstormed out loud while looking at the ceiling, both feet on the workbench. I mean, your plushie keeps a creature from this violet dimension sealed from what you told me. I wouldn't say sealed is the best term. Doesn't matter, it can still contain it and prevent its energy from leaking out, Jasmine interrupted him. If we combine both our technologies, then we could design something keeping this hypothetical violet flux energy inside you. Instead of dispersing the heat, we'll ramp it up. And in theory, this would increase the energy his power would be able to access. I love it when you talk dirty. I'm so fucking excited about this, Ryan. Jasmine was trembling from impatience. Much like Len and all geniuses Ryan had met, she felt happiest when doing mad science. We're going to discover the source of powers, change the whole world. Scratch that, we'll own it. If you could, would you change your power? Ryan asked innocently. Trade it for something else? Nah, I'm pretty glad to have mine. Hell, I wish I got it earlier, though I wonder how much my state of mind back then affected my power. Jasmine glanced at him strangely. You? Ryan sighed. I dunno, he admitted. I've hated and loved my power in equal measures, but now, it's just part of who I am. I can't imagine myself without it. I get it, Vulcan replied, though frowning. You're a pretty private guy, you know that. Do you want to know my secret identity? You're asking me questions you don't want to ask yourself, and I don't like that, Jasmine replied. I ain't your psychiatrist, Ryan. In the end, everyone is on their own. I know, Ryan replied, his mood turning sour. But it would be nice to be able to count on someone else long term. Close your eyes peacefully, knowing someone has got your back for life? I thought I had that once. Didn't work out. Jasmine pointed at her mech with her chin. The only things you can count on are those you made yourself. Yeah, Ryan felt the same way about his car. Do you know of the hedgehog's dilemma? What's that? A pet disease. Two hedgehogs seek to move closer and share heat during cold weather, but they cannot avoid hurting one another with their spines. They want to snuggle, but that would mean lowering their guard. Jasmine quickly caught on. Are you the hedgehog, or am I? We both are. Well, that's fucking pessimistic, Jasmine replied. It's experience talking. Truth was, Ryan sincerely hoped that Jasmine's armor technology would produce results. That somehow, things would be different this time. Maybe he was a fool, but the courier would never stop believing things could improve. He faced deadlines though. Though he had lost many men, Henny Fat Lecter was still toiling inside Mecran's bunker, and Ryan didn't see any way to evict him without casualties or revealing the base's existence. The best solution he had found was to recruit Shroud to invade the bunker, but the glass manipulator refused to move without his team's support, and Leo Hargraves wouldn't hit New Rome until next week. It could have happened differently, Ryan said. What? Your power, the courier said. It's not just the potion. It's part you, part random. His girlfriend frowned. What do you mean? If you give two different red elixirs to one person in the same circumstances, he won't get the same ability. If you give the same elixir to one person while he's afraid for his life or feeling safe, he will get a different power, though within the color's classification. Same if he's healthy, poisoned, or irradiated. You can't repeat an experience in the exact same circumstances, Jasmine replied, skeptical. Ryan could, and he did. At one point, the courier thought he might eventually find a way to replicate his power. But while he had learned a great deal about elixirs, he also learned it couldn't be done. Jasmine moved from her seat, grabbed a water bottle, and sat on Ryan's lap as if she owned the place. He responded by putting his arms around her waist. She was warm to the touch. But if I humor your theory, she said, putting her back against his chest, what you're saying is, if someone had gotten my elixir, they wouldn't have become a weapon genius. Ryan shook his head. And if you had received my elixir, you wouldn't have gotten my power. The elixir partly adapts itself to the person drinking it. And once the unique power has been assigned, nobody else can get the exact same one as yours. That was only true for the original elixirs though. Makes sense. Augustus probably managed to use two without going crazy due to a unique genetic quirk, according to Dynamis research. Jasmine rested her head on his shoulder, her face thoughtful. How did you get yours? A friend found it among a batch of 3. I took mine while trying to get out of a hopeless situation. The real tragedy was Len though. Shorty had won a power she would have loved under normal circumstances, but one that couldn't grant her dearest wish. And you, darling? Stole it while trying to flee Libya, Jasmine said with a scowl. If you think Italy was a shithole during the wars, then you haven't seen my homeland. Now Dynamis owns the oil field, and nobody controls anything else. It's all tribes and marauders killing each other. Can't be worse than Monaco. She raised an eyebrow, a little curious. What's up in Monaco? Trust me. Ryan looked at her seriously. No matter how desperate things get, don't go to Monaco. She chuckled at his confusing words. Comb my hair. What? Why? Because I asked you to, minion. Ryan chuckled playfully, raising Jasmine's hair and assembling it into a bun. The courier looked at the neural interface below them with interest. Can you make a second one of these? Sure, she said. I've got to admit it though, it's not really my tech. It's Dynamis. Dynamis? Hector has a decade-long project about downloading minds in new bodies to achieve immortality. Scan a whole brain and transfer it into someone else's. I guess the man doesn't want his sons to inherit anytime soon. I always knew corporations would eventually find a way to trademark humanity. They can't, even if Hector would do that if he could. A brain is a complex thing, and it's double the complexity when you're a genome. So they need cloned bodies, which their creepy Dr. Tyranno can provide. Jasmine shrugged, before sipping from her water bottle. That machine-human brain interface was one of their milestones. I'm not sure how far they have gotten since I left. And you managed to remake that device from memory? While I'm a weapon genius, I'm also a genius, period. Jasmine was too modest to boast. That's why I'm interested in your chronoradio's brain interface. My human reaction time can't entirely keep up with my armor while I use manual controls, but with a perfect interface. A question crossed my mind, Ryan said. What happens if we each wear an interface connected to the other's brain, and then do child-unfriendly stuff? She looked at him with a sly smirk, lightly kissing him. We'll have to try for research purposes, the genius said, before tossing her empty bottle away. Her boyfriend froze time to put it in the trash can. But that will wait for later. It's almost time to go to Ishi Island. Do you think my cashmere suit will protect me from the radiation? No, she smirked at him. But my mech will. A true winning team. Today was the Ishi Island Defense Perimeter Inspection. And while he wouldn't be allowed inside the Superlab itself, Narchinia had asked that Ryan come to visit. She probably felt quite lonely on that island. Strangely though, Livia had given her permission and asked Vulcan to bring extra muscle. I still don't get why the princess wants you to come, no offense, Jasmine said. I don't get her either, Ryan admitted. He had the feeling Livia had her own agenda and played with her cards close to her chest. Curiosity about how their powers interacted couldn't explain everything about her behavior. Do you know what her power is? Vulcan shook her head. She keeps it under wraps. All I know is that she is a pseudo-precognitive who can interact with alternate universes, but she doesn't advertise. Considering Ryan intended to destroy the island to settle his deal with Mr. See-Through, she didn't see very far. Vulcan hadn't received any tactical advice or warning in the loops where the junkyard raid went wrong either. Either Livia lied about her abilities, or she had some harsh limitations. This inspection is a waste of time, Jasmine vented off. That Superlab is almost as well defended as this armory, and my place isn't haunted. You would need an army to bring it down. Challenge accepted. And if Dynamis truly had a brain uploading project, Ryan would need to pay them a visit too. Len had already sent him the design of her communications system, though it was the equivalent of receiving a car's computerized parts while missing the engine, the wheels, and everything else. Now that he had seen Vulcan's armor design, Ryan had memorized it. If he could combine Len's tech with Jasmine's, hook it up with the chrono radio, and steal whatever brain scan Dynamis had available, maybe he wouldn't be alone anymore. For the first time in a long while, Ryan felt hope. The island of Ischia used to be a paradise once. A beautiful resort in the middle of Naples Bay, where tourists from all of Europe came to enjoy its thermal sources and fresh air. Somewhere along the way, the fabled paradise had turned into a hellhole. Ryan didn't know why Mekran had bombed this island, but he had done a pretty good job of it. Even more than 15 years after the deed, a purple miasma covered most of the area, a plague so toxic it had killed every life form there. Plants, animals, humans. The substance's toxicity and radioactivity had transformed the island into a graveyard. Thick iron walls equipped with wind turbines circled Ischia's coast, perhaps to prevent the miasma from reaching the mainland. The only part of the island with any sign of life whatsoever was the Castello Aragonese, a pre-Christ fortress. Built on a volcanic islet, the castle was connected to the island by a stone bridge, shattered yet never rebuilt. In stark contrast with the rest of the island, the castle's outer layers housed plant life. Overgrowth and crimson, alien flowers formed a ring around the fortress. Vulcan had spared no expense on the defenses either. Unmanned turrets covered the ancient stone walls, alongside automated anti-air defenses. Mooks in power armor kept watch over the facility, equipped with flamethrowers, mini-guns, and rocket launchers. Ryan would need to do a suicide run to get past the perimeter. The Castello Aragonese had seen many masters come and go since its construction, from the Romans to the Kingdom of Naples. But the Augusti were the first to turn it into a drug lab after she landed her mech on the outer wall. Unbothered by the defenses, Ryan stepped out of it. Much to his surprise, the air was breathable, probably thanks to the mutant plants surrounding the lab. He found Livia waiting nearby, looking at the Mediterranean Sea with longing. Sparrow and Mortimer acted as her bodyguards. "Quick save, Vulcan, welcome," Livia politely greeted the newcomers, while Vulcan emerged from her suit. Armored soldiers immediately checked on Ryan, in case he had smuggled anything dangerous on the island. "Well, more dangerous than usual. I appreciate your punctuality. We had to be in time for the group visit," Ryan deadpanned. "The poor Mortimer didn't get any free candy at the end," Mortimer complained. "I'm afraid you will not be allowed inside, Quick save," said Livia. "The inner workings of this facility are top secret for all but our elite members. Instead, You will stay outside and assist the staff in case we are attacked. Can't I get a meth cook internship? The courier asked. No, but I'm sure Narcinia will show you the gardens when we are done, Livia replied, before speaking to an empty spot. Geist, please, don't be shy. A freezing wind blew on the outer walls, while a yellow, ectoplasmic skull the size of a house manifested above the group. A swirling vortex of colored dust and eldritch energies surrounded the leering apparition. Hi, guys. But the ghost's small, casual voice was completely at odds with his sinister appearance. Nobody had reacted with shock either, perhaps because they lived in a world with far weirder things. Somebody called the Ghostbusters, Ryan said. We've got a ghost problem. I'm Francois, the enormous skull replied casually. Or Geist. I prefer Casper the Ghost, Ryan said, Jasmine chuckling. Also, your name is Francois, but you use a German nickname. You aren't one of these self-hating Frenchmen, right? I thought about using the Spectre, but James Bond got there first. Your whole existence has a lot of terrible implications, Vulcan said. Namely, it means there's a freaking afterlife. Personally, Ryan thought it was simply yellow elixirs being weird, but Casper seemed to agree with her. Heaven is all yellow and golden, though I only got a glimpse, the ghost said. I've been trying to get back in there, but so far, the gates are barred. Hopefully, Father Torque will manage to exorcise me. Have you tried suicide? Ryan suggested. I know it's not very Catholic, but maybe you can possess a corpse and then kill yourself again? If you try often enough, maybe it will stick. I tried everything. Fire. Ropes? Nuclear detonation? The skull said nothing for a second. Haven't done the last one, he admitted. You won't, Olivia said, her tone suddenly serious. I won't allow it. The worst death is fire though, Casper the Ghost argued, the skull shuddering. Cooked meat is so painful, it makes you a vegetarian. The rope is the best suicide method, by far, Ryan said. It's painful, but if you do it the right way, it gets weirdly enjoyable. Takes a lot of trying to get the handle on it though. Only one suicide attempt out of 3 succeeds, Mortimer said with a morbid tone. I feel so bad for the other two. Mortimer, don't encourage them, Sparrow chastised him. Geist, please be on the lookout for invaders, Livia declared, her voice silencing everyone. The odds aren't good today. I can perceive alternate realities from my point of view, but a lot of them have become dark lately. Darkazane, you switched out the lights? Jasmine deadpanned. Darkazane, I died in them. She said that with the same detachment as Quicksave himself. So fast I didn't see the cause. Well, that's ominous, Ryan said. I'll say it again, Vulcan brushed it off. Attacking this place is assisted suicide, Princess. We will put the boast to the test. Livia smiled before looking at Quicksave. We will meet again later. Jasmine followed the Augusty princess and her bodyguards as they walked inside the facility, leaving Ryan and Casper outside. The courier looked at the sea, a simple question on his mind. How could he blow this island up? I win, Ryan said, resting on the flower garden in the outer wall's shadow. Again? Geist complained, the ghost overseeing the game with a doubtful expression. Apparently, his phantom skull of a face could squint. It's impossible. How can I keep losing? Well, it was hard to catch someone capable of stopping time. In the end, the trip to Bliss Island had been a disappointment. Every time Ryan tried to visit a restricted area beyond the walls and the gardens, armored guards or Geist kindly asked him to turn back. Though he memorized the patrols and turrets locations, the courier didn't see any way to get inside the facility without starting a fight and ending the current run. Eventually, he just settled into playing games with Geist in the plant garden outside the fortress, waiting for Vulcan and the others to finish their business. The ghost had happily played along, though he wasn't very good. Ryan had the feeling the suicidal spectre appreciated having some company. I really need a job as a drug cook, Ryan told Geist. Can't you hunt Cardinal Creep until he gives in? There's only one cook, and it's Ceres, Geist shrugged. The rest of the facility supports her work, and nothing else. Ryan figured as much. Narchinia's power made it easy for her to create new plants to harvest as raw material. Even this entire garden, capable of thriving in a toxic island, was probably her work. So if she retires, no more bliss. Sort of, Geist replied. Father Torque has enough flower strains to continue the work even if she is gone, though the quality will take a hit. You shouldn't say that out loud. Ryan didn't even move an inch, as Mortimer leaned over his shoulder, having phased out of the ground. Walls have ears. Do you want to play? The courier casually asked the bodyguard. It's funnier when there are 3 players, and the guards are humorless killjoys. You're no fun? No fun at all, the hitman said, disappointed that he couldn't startle Ryan no matter how hard he tried. Shouldn't you be inside? Geist asked, telekinetically crafting a chair out of nearby stones and dirt. Sparrow asked me to check on him, Mortimer said, glancing at Ryan while sitting on the makeshift chair. She was worried he might start a forest fire or something. That's demeaning, Ryan said. Sometimes I settle for nuclear winters. They make me want to glow in the dark, the hitman replied, looking at the game. What are you playing? Ryan showed Mortimer Bertola's bones. The hitman glanced at the bones, then at Casper the ghost. New Cleburns, really? It's to stick with a ghost theme, the courier replied. Want to play? It's an old variant, a pure game of luck. Mortimer shrugged and grabbed some of the bones. We should play cards next, he said. Or use a Ouija board, Ryan suggested, glancing at Casper. Should be easy. How does it even work? Mortimer asked Geist, as he threw the bones with the force of his mind. You need to settle some unfinished business before moving on. Bite me, Casper the ghost explained. I drank a yellow elixir on last Easter, but it didn't come with a manual. Hell, I thought I didn't get any power until Necron's Nino plague turned my body to dust. I got the briefest glimpse of an afterlife, and then I was yanked back to that dumpster and bound to my mortal remains. And you can't leave the island? Mortimer asked, throwing his bones on the ground. Mortimer likes haunted houses. I could bury you in my garden. I can't go far, no, Geist lamented. My remains are all over the place now, so good luck putting it back together. Even cancel only goes as far as preventing me from manifesting, and Pluto's power needs someone to be alive in the first place. If you asked Ryan, besides the geographic limitation, Casper had hit the jackpot as far as yellow elixirs went. Unlimited ectoplasmic powers plus immortality? That was a life to die for. Ryan laughed at his own mental joke, much to the others' confusion. Frankly, I'm just a groundskeeper cleaning up the place, waiting for the end, Guy said before throwing more bones on the ground. It would explain his casual attitude about the crime family's secrets, especially if they couldn't kill him permanently. Father Torque says he's close to achieving heaven though. Poor Mortimer sent many people there, the hitman said. And to the place below too. I haven't reached any of those places, and I tried a lot, Ryan said, winning another Nicklebans round, and fairly this time. Father Torque saw God when he took his elixir, Guy said, and he sounded like he believed it too. He thinks a powerful psychotropic like bliss could replicate the effect and allow him to receive a divine revelation. Not sure if it will work, but a ghost can always hope. I hope Ceres can solve all the long-term health problems before he overdoses on bliss though, Ryan said. Especially the sterility thing. Though I guess it won't matter much to a priest. Sterility? Geist asked, a bit surprised. I know health safety isn't high among your priorities, but trust me, don't get high on your own product. Ryan had studied all drugs in depth. For research purposes only. Among other side effects, bliss acts as a long-term endocrine disruptor, working on a genetic level. Genomes aren't affected much due to their enhanced metabolism, but everyone else more or less becomes sterile after 1 year. Oh, that. Mortimer shrugged. I heard the rumor, but if you asked poor old Mortimer, it's just Dynamics propaganda. They can't make a better product so they denigrate ours. Ryan looked at the hitman, squinted, and then stopped time. When it resumed, the courier had grabbed Mortimer's mask and looked beneath. His true face looked a lot like Lawrence Fishburne's. Same receding hairline, same soft features, same Morpheus glare. "Hey, my secret identity," Mortimer complained while grabbing back his skull mask. "You aren't even old," Ryan complained, extremely disappointed. He must have been in his early 40s at worst. "You're 30 years early to be such a downer." "Poor Mortimer is old inside," the hitman replied, putting back the mask. "He's an old soul. More like an emo teen's soul in an adult's body." Before Ryan could mock the hitman further, his phone rang inside his coat. The courier grabbed it but didn't recognize the number. "Quick Save Deliveries, what can I do for you?" he asked while taking the call. "Rory? Shorty? Wait, Len had a phone. Is that your Goma?" Mortimer asked mockingly, still sore about the messed part. "Vulcan won't be happy about that." Ryan threw the bones at Mortimer's face while walking away, and they bounced off the cackling hitman's mask. Maybe his intangibility only worked through inorganic matter. "I couldn't contact you on the chrono radio," Len said. Her voice was tense, alarmed, and Ryan could hear the children talking in the background. "You're on Ischia Island?" "The only habitable part of it," he replied, leaning against the outer wall. "You know Vulcan can probably record our conversations? Everything you say will be held against you before in a court of law." "I couldn't wait," she said, clearly in no mood for jokes. "My radars picked tremors coming from Rust Town, and multiple flying objects moving towards Ischia Island." "Oh. Were the meta climbing out of their hole?" Ryan wasn't sure if this was good or bad news. Before he could ask for details, someone else called him. Once again, the courier didn't recognize the number. "Excuse me, Shorty, I will be back in a minute," Ryan said, before switching calls. "Quick Save Deliveries, what can I do for you?" "Pay for 4 explosions, and the 5th one is free." "You owe me a suit, Romano." "Blackthorn. I hope you appreciate that everything that happens now, will be on your head," Ryan said at the same time as his caller. "You think this is a game?" Ryan said at the same time, their words matching with perfect synchronicity. Enrique Manada fell silent on the other side of the line. The courier briefly wondered if he had been vexed. "I'm sorry, but after a while, you've heard them all. You should stick to gardening, Poison Rosie. I see this isn't your first rodeo, Romano, but this will be your last. I'm not sure if you use a marketing department for your speeches, but I would fire them if I were you." Though Ryan was flattered to have earned himself an archenemy. "Have you called to exchange threats? Perhaps challenge me to a duel to restore your lost honor?" "Nothing so old-fashioned," the corporate mastermind replied, considering his next words. "In truth, I wanted to thank you. You succeeded where I failed for years." That was a new one. "Looking fabulous." "You people mistake pragmatism for weakness," Enrique said, ignoring Ryan's jab. "You think that because we let you be for so long, that we are prey. You're wrong. We simply know that war is bad for business. War has no winners, only different shades of losers." "I'm not sure I follow." "My father is a pragmatic man," Enrique explained. "He believes we can have a détente with your boss, but my brother and I know better. You Augusti aren't a state or corporation we can coexist with. You're feudal warlords who only understand strength. And after you dared to attack our HQ, Don Hector finally decided to speak your language. Consider what's about to follow. A friendly reminder not to overstep again." Well, that was ominous. Is this about the suit? Or revenge for the public humiliation? "No, Romano, this goes beyond that." Blackthorn's composure broke slightly, and his true feelings poured through the corporate mask. "We have struggled for years to rebuild a functioning society. Now we are at a crossroads, with 2 visions facing off. The one that prevails will dictate what new world emerges from the Earth's ashes. And I cannot, in good conscience, let Augustus become humanity's future." To be honest, he had a point. At least in theory. "Take a look at Rust Town," Ryan replied, completely unimpressed. See where your high-minded words meet reality? We don't always succeed at improving things, I will concede it, but the difference between my organization and yours is that at least we try. Another short pause. Have you heard of Giorgio Rosa, Romano? Giorgio Rosa, Giorgio Rosa. The Republic of Rose Island? That crazy guy who built an oil platform in the Middle Sea and called it an independent nation? You're a man of culture, Enrique said, his tone switching from icy to extremely pleased. I assume you also remember what happened to his rogue island? Ryan frowned, before looking at the sea. Black spots appeared in the skies, flying under the sun towards the island. It was sunk by the Italian government? Blackthorn hung up on him. Ryan switched back to Len. Rory? What's happening? Say whatever you want about Dynamis, Ryan said, a strident alarm echoing across Ischia Island as the spots started taking shape. They aren't all bark. 30 war helicopters were making their way towards the Bliss production facility, moving in 3 groups of 10. Ryan recognized the model as customized NH-90S, optimized for troop transports and naval warfare. They probably transported 300 soldiers, perhaps more. That's a lot of mooks, Ryan observed. It reminded him of the Rusttown raid, except he was on the receiving end this time. I'm coming, Len said, before abruptly ending the call. Ryan slowly put the cell phone back in its pocket, while Geist looked up at the skies. Besides the helicopters, a few genomes followed the assault team by flight. Besides the usual suspect Wyvern, who hadn't transformed yet, Ryan noticed a man wearing a fabulous hawk-like costume made of crimson and green feathers. The very wind seemed to carry him above the ground, with a small tornado forming around his waist. A red-skinned, muscled Amazon followed, unleashing streams of flames from her feet to propel herself up. A devilish tail grew out of her pants, and 2 curved horns from her long black hair. Her skin-tight, suggestive leather suit reminded Ryan of a biker advertisement. Well, Mortimer said, rising from his chair, bringing out a rifle hidden beneath his cloak, that ain't good at all. And when Sweep's back in town? Devilry too, Casper said, looking at the red-skinned woman. When Sweep was the template of the Tempest knockoff elixirs, and Devilry had inspired the pyrokinetic firebrand type. Dynamis had summoned Illinois Meteori's elite team. Maybe they brought Felix the cat too. The guards protecting the island's walls had immediately raised their weapons, while the turrets around the fortress turned towards the helicopters. Instead of powering through and starting a fight immediately, Dynamis troops stopped at a respectable distance, waiting for a signal before opening fire. Wyvern moved at the army's vanguard, carrying a megaphone. Out of everyone present, she looked the happiest. Knowing the heroine, she must have been waiting for a pretext to attack the island for a long time. Quick save. Wyvern spoke through the megaphone, her voice echoing across the skies. Jasmine. You are under arrest for staging a terrorist attack against Dynamis Labs. Both of you, step outside, hands behind the head. So what? They could let Vulcan trying to murder Ryan in a past loop slide, but not the theft of a suit. Then again, it was Kashmir. Most probably, it was the public nature of the heist that pissed off Dynamis. An attempted murder off cameras could be swept under the rug, but a public affront had to be met with a harsh response to save face. Fuck off, Laura. Vulcan's furious voice echoed from the fortress, carried by loudspeakers. She must have noticed the incoming army on her radars long before it showed up. I'm barely keeping my thumb from the trigger right now. If you both come without resisting, you shall remain unharmed and we will leave this island peacefully, Wyvern said, her gaze focusing on Ryan. Otherwise. She left the sentence hanging, all the defensive turrets pointed at her. Can I pay you to look the other way? Ryan asked, raising euro bills like a white flag. You were fighting for the wrong side, quick save, Wyvern replied, completely unfazed by his taunts. But suit yourself. I've daydreamed about wrecking that death factory for over 2 years. I would like to see you yuppies try, Mortimer added, the walls trembling while Guy's skull face transformed into a ghastly vision of hell. Mortimer has been itching for blood lately, and he wonders if you bleed red or green. I will say it again, Laura, Vulcan's voice echoed through the loudspeakers, a turret firing a warning shot into the sea. Fuck off. I'm sorry, Ryan said regretfully, straightening his coat. But giving you back that suit would be a legit war crime. I will take this as a no, Wyvern said, more pleased than anything. Good. I no longer have to hold back. The heroine quickly tossed the megaphone into the sea and started changing shape, growing into an enormous dragon. To be honest, the mighty beast roared, her powerful voice carrying across the island. I have never done a drug bust this big before. As both the turrets and helicopters opened fire at each other, Ryan stopped time, moved back to Mortimer's chair, and turned it to face the sea. The courier sat, put his hands behind his hair, and let time resume to watch the fireworks. Shroud had wanted this island wrecked. And Ryan always delivered. Back when he played open-world games, Ryan always loved to set the AI against itself. To lead one monster on the path of a settlement, and then watch NPCs fight computer-generated enemies for his entertainment. The courier always found it relaxing. The real-life site was a lot more stressful. Dynamis Aerial Force had unleashed a rain of missiles, which Jasmine's anti-aerial defense had mostly detonated mid-flight. Geist, now howling spectre the size of a building, also redirected some of the projectiles with telekinetic force, blowing up two of the helicopters. Unfortunately, the Augusti had less luck with the enemy genomes. The invulnerable Wyvern had smashed through the fortress outer wall, sending stones flying in all directions. The pyrokinetic devilry had started bombarding the Superlab's defenses from above, targeting the turrets, and the Aeromancer wind sweep had summoned a miniature tornado to try to repel Geist. Hey, quick save, want to bet with poor old Mortimer? Mortimer said, shooting at the helicopters without taking cover. Bullets and projectiles phased through his body harmlessly. The one who kills the most corpos wins. Do non-lethal takedowns count? Ryan asked. The courier was still sitting on his chair with a gun in hand, using a mix of mist-ups and accurate shots to blow up missiles before they could actually hit the fortress. Because I left my best, anti-war helicopter stuff at home. A projectile aimed for his location, so the courier stopped time, moved the chair away, and let time resume once he had reached safety. Show off, Mortimer said, unimpressed. You're worse than Fortuna. Hey, I resent that remark, Ryan protested, tossing his gun away when he ran out of bullets. I work on looking perfect, while her power does all the work. Truthfully, Ryan was starting to become a little worried. While the fortress human and automated defenses resisted well, Dynamis was making progress, and the courier wondered how Augustus would react to a very public assault on his drug factory. Ryan suspected reinforcements would be on their way soon and turn the already chaotic situation into a massive brawl. In short, he couldn't wait. With some of the defensive turrets down, helicopters managed to land atop the outer wall. Soldiers in riot gear or advanced power armor engaged the Augusti defenders in a firefight on foot, while Wyvern kept hitting the fort in an attempt to make a hole into the facility. The ground shook with every blow of the giant dragon, although it seemed Vulcan had reinforced the old stone walls. Eventually, Ryan noticed another helicopter landing in the garden nearby. A group of 8 riot gear troopers stepped out of it, escorting 2 genomes. One was a man with long black hair wearing a stylized, Mad Max-like mix of rusted steel armor and cloak. Most of his face was covered by a red scarf and black goggles, and worryingly, he carried an explosive belt around his waist. The other, more colorful one, was a young woman Ryan's age, perhaps of Chinese or Japanese descent. She reminded the courier of these pre-war K-pop idols, dyed hair, lovely face, and cute brown eyes. She wore a strange dress whose colors and length seemed to shift as the courier looked. Her bright, shy smile contrasted with the chaos around her. Reload and wardrobe, Mortimer said while opening fire at the newcomers, the riot troops forming a plexiglass shield wall to protect themselves. The Dynamis genomes hid behind them, listening to orders thanks to earplugs. Just great, I can't stand Reload. Why, because of his terrible fashion sense? Ryan asked, rising to his feet and grabbing his chair as an improvised weapon. Seriously, Dynamis marketing department should be eradicated. How could they advertise such a fashion disaster? Because he just won't die. Mortimer snarled, reloading his rifle. He's the worst kind of violet. That made Ryan quite curious. He looked at the apocalypse punk disaster behind the shield wall, but couldn't figure out his power from how he looked. Last warning, Romano. One of the troopers said, readying his own firearm behind the shield wall. Surrender now, or we open fire back. We're allowed to use lethal force. Didn't anyone tell you, I'm immortal? Ryan shouted back, raising his chair threateningly while explosions resonated in the background. I'll come back to haunt you. Oh, you're yellow too? Wardrobe asked from behind the wall, more curious than anything. He's distracted, shoot him. One of the troopers shouted, pointing a rifle over the plexiglass wall. Mortimer immediately opened fire, disarming the man with a well-placed bullet while Ryan threw the chair at the corporate police. The projectile bounced off the shields, while Wardrobe's clothes literally changed shape. Her strange dress transformed into a wolf mascot suit, and she leaped over the garden with the strength and agility of a werewolf. Ryan had to stop time to prevent her from pouncing on him like a mouse, using the brief time window to put the Fisty Brothers on. Oh my, here I go dying again. Reload said gregariously, as he leaped over the trooper's shield wall, and rushed at Mortimer's cover like a suicide bomber. In a scene straight out of an action movie, the hitman shot the hero in the chest, but he continued his charge. Reload jumped at Mortimer, who quickly phased through the ground below. The hero's belt detonated and blew Mortimer's stone cover to smithereens. Ryan sensed a vague, familiar sensation at the back of his skull. At first, he thought it was acid rain's doing, until Reload's body reformed at the spot where he died in a flash of violet light, completely unharmed. His intact suicide belt was still around his waist. You copycat, I was wearing suicide belts before they went mainstream. Ryan pointed an accusing finger at Reload, running in circles to escape Wardrobe's claws. If you stop time, I'll sue. Why didn't Dynamis call him to my lord? When Mortimer didn't reappear, the troopers turned to Ryan and started providing Wardrobe with suppressing fire. The happy courier stopped the clock to avoid the bullets and closed the gap with the mooks, punching the closest one with Fisty when time resumed. Much like the cannon fodder they were, they went down in one hit. While her boyfriend was busy brawling with the troopers, a fully armored Vulcan emerged from the fortress, tackling Wyvern rugby style. The mech pushed the surprised dragon back against Asia Island's reefs, the transformed hero responding by unleashing a stream of aurora-like light with her maw. Crimson beams came out of the fortress to shoot the helicopters, probably Sparrow's doing, as Ryan single-handedly demolished the Trooper Corporation and Wardrobe remained at a distance, trying to figure out her approach. Reload entered the melee. He looked under his armor and brought out a tiny metal rod. A sword of violet light came out. Ryan interrupted his one-sided beating of a trooper to look at the divine weapon, mesmerized by its perfection. A pure, timeless design, and the purest shade of violet he had ever seen. It would match his suit perfectly. It was love at first sight. Ryan instantly activated his power, stole the blade, and kicked Reload in the frozen time. When time resumed and the hero fell on his back among the flowers, Ryan raised his trophy up to the skies. It was as weightless as a feather, but much to his disappointment, it made no sound. SCHVRMMMMMM. The courier said, trying to imitate a real lightsaber's noise. SCHVRMMMMMM. He would never let it go. Hey, my laser blade. Reload complained, rising back to his feet while Ryan returned to beating on the troopers. A lightsaber. Ryan shouted back at this ignorant fool, absent-mindedly slicing a Dynamis mook shield and rifle with it like butter. Search your feelings. You know it to be true. At this point, his quips wrote themselves. Thankfully, Reload said while drawing a second, crimson laser blade, I got a spare. Wrong color though. By now, Ryan had kicked the ass of every mook present or disarmed them, leaving only the two heroes to challenge him. The troopers fled back to the helicopter and quickly retreated from the island entirely, the genomes facing each other in a Mexican standoff. The courier briefly glanced at Jasmine, but his girlfriend seemed to have the situation well in hand. The Genius and Wyvern were engaged in a long-range aerial firefight, with Vulcan repelling her ex-partner from the island's perimeter. Hey, quick save. Wardrobe's werewolf suit transformed into a jack-o'-lantern Halloween costume. A pumpkin mask covered her head, the lips moving as if they belonged to a living being. Is it true you can stop time? Yes, I can. Ryan replied with the same friendly tone, pointing his lightsaber at her like a fencer. Reload raised his own weapon, trying to find an opening. Or perhaps to look cool. Is Felix the cat with you? Oh, he wanted to come, but Enrique said no. Wardrobe replied, manifesting a yellow facsimile of a fiery lantern in her hands and throwing it at Ryan like a stone. I'm Wardrobe, by the way. Nice to meet you. Well, she took the battle as seriously as Ryan himself did. A shame they were fighting on opposing sides, the courier was pretty sure they would get along great. Using his pilfered lightsaber, Ryan cut the lantern projectile in half, the strange device collapsing into harmless yellow dust, before parrying Darth Reload's blade as he attempted to flank him. The two laser swords met without one going through the other, and Ryan used a time stop to dodge a new fire lantern from Wardrobe. This time the projectile exploded into ghostly fire upon hitting the ground. Her power was weird. Unfortunately for him, Reload was an amateur with a fancy weapon, while the courier had mastered every style of swordsmanship known to mankind. While the setup was epic, the lightsaber duel left Ryan wanting. Seriously, at this point, you forced me to use only one hand, the courier said, putting an arm behind his back and parrying all of the hero's strikes with the other. And it still feels unfair. I'll show you unfair. Infuriated by the taunt, Reload attempted to detonate his suicide belt, but Ryan used his time stop to move out of range. The hero exploded into dust, before reforming. Use your anger. Ryan mocked him, absent-mindedly cutting a fiery lantern from the side. Use your pain. I'm sure you have a lot to draw upon. You can spam time stop? Reload snarled with anger, wildly striking the rival violet genome with his blade the moment he recovered. His poor attempt at breaking past Ryan's defense didn't work, but it only frustrated him further. You overpowered cheat. Unlimited power. Ryan replied. With a swift move, the courier cut the hero's arm off. Only for it to reattach itself to the body. Limited time rewind, except applied to the body and objects in close contact. He refused to go down, no matter the amount of failed tries. Ryan felt some spiritual kinship for this guy. Not enough to take him seriously, of course, but he would probably invite him for a drink once the dust had settled. Why don't you transform into Supergirl though? Ryan asked Wardrobe while dodging a strike from Reload. He stopped time, grabbed the hero by his scarf with his free hand, and used the momentum to throw him at his teammate. You could wrap up this battle in seconds if you did. I can't, that's copyrighted content. The yellow genome replied as time resumed, her costume transforming into a bedsheet. Reload went through her body as if she wasn't even there. I can only use public domain stuff. What, intellectual property is your kryptonite? Ryan asked, immensely disappointed. How does that even work? I don't make my powers rules, alright. Wardrobe replied with a scowl, wounded by his comment. Her costume changed once more into that of a witch, and she shot a lightning bolt at Ryan with her fingertips. Sorry, Ryan told Wardrobe, blocking the lightning with his beam saber, Star Wars style. Honestly, I would totally hit on you under normal circumstances. You're completely my type, but I have an exclusive contract right now. Oh, thanks, but I have an exclusive contract too, she said cheerfully while Reload rose back up. If anything, Ryan admired his perseverance. Do you want to be my archenemy? I have none, and marketing says it boosts the ratings. Well, Seshok was dead in this loop, so. Sure, I'm free every weekend. Thanks. Wardrobe's costume changed again, this time turning into a mummy cosplay. The flowers around her immediately turned to dust, and her bandages transformed into tattered leashes flying towards Ryan. The courier hastily cut them with his laser blade, while Reload attempted to flank him from the left. It confused Ryan why Wardrobe didn't change into another genome, or stick to one form instead of switching constantly. Perhaps it was her fighting style, or her ability, however versatile, had a time limit. Still, it was one of the best fights he had since he arrived in New Rome. Completely worth the trip. His power is completely busted. Reload complained, as Ryan briefly stopped time to dodge one of his strikes. Wardrobe, you got anything that can resist it? I think I do, but Enrique won't like it. She replied, her costume shifted. Ryan stopped moving, observing the scene unfolding. Wardrobe's costume transformed into the guise of an ancient Greek god, including a toga, sandals, and a laurel crown of gold. The costume seemed to cover her skin, turning it into an unnatural shade of white. It made her look like an ivory statue of shit. Ryan immediately stopped time, turning the world purple. All movement, all noise stopped. The raging battle in the background became nothing more than a prop, a moment frozen in time. Oh, so that's how it looks, Wardrobe said, looking around in amazement at her frozen teammate. Her fingers shone with yellow electricity, almost golden. It's so pretty. Chitter had warned him in a past loop, but he hadn't listened. Shit, 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 shit. Ryan shouted while Wardrobe blasted him with a lightning bolt inside the frozen time. The blast hit him in the chest, propelling him backward. It hurt, and it looked like a bolt. But having died from electrocution more times than he could count, Ryan immediately recognized the attack as a pale imitation of lightning. The real thing would have killed him on the spot, but this yellow imitation only inflicted minor damage. It ran on movie logic rather than real thunderbolts. Ryan ended his unwilling flight at the edge of the garden, where the flowers reached the Mediterranean seawater. Time resumed, Reload immediately shouting in happiness. It worked. I can't hold it. Wardrobe said, her clothes shifting uncontrollably. 1 second, she was dressed like Augustus, and the next, she wore a Tyrannosaur mascot costume. Damn it, the persona isn't stable enough. At least she can't use the original's full power, Ryan thought, as he rose back to his feet. Or else he would have been vaporized. His chest still hurt like hell though. It's over, quick save. Wardrobe said with a smirk as she embraced her new Saurian form, while Ryan stood tall once more, lightsaber in hand. We have the high ground. Ryan wanted to groan, but her delivery was just perfect. Though they had underestimated the power of friendship. Ryan sensed something emerging from the waters behind him, the clinks and clanks of heavy robotic armor stepping on the land music to his ears. Dynamis heroes blinked in surprise, before taking a torrent of pressurized water to the face. Ryan looked over his shoulder, as his oldest friend moved to his side, her water weapon unleashing everything it had at the Illinois Miliori duo. Shorty? Sorry. Len pleaded, her voice distorted by her underwater armor. I came as fast as I could. She maintained the water pressure, but much to Ryan's astonishment, the liquid started splitting into two halves. Wardrobe and Reload stood unharmed in the middle, the yellow genome's costume having once more changed to some sort of wizened old man cosplay, white beard included. You can even copy Moses? Ryan asked his newfound rival, astonished by her power's sheer flexibility. What else, you can dress as Jesus Christ and turn water to wine? I do that at parties sometimes. She replied, while Len stopped using her water pumps. The duo watched the other for a few seconds, trying to think of a way out. A series of explosions interrupted the standoff though, as a Dynamis helicopter crashed nearby in the garden, going down in flames and setting the flowers ablaze. Ryan looked at the Mediterranean Sea. Colossal water arms the size of skyscrapers had sprouted from the waves, pursuing the helicopters like snakes. Devilry stopped bombarding the fort to focus on these strange phenomenons, blasting the water tentacles with mighty fireballs. Yet, even as they turned to steam from the heat, more appendages rose from the waters in an attempt to crush the flyer. Far away, Ryan noticed multiple jet skis making their way towards the island. Among the drivers, he recognized a few familiar faces, such as Greta. Reinforcements. Meanwhile, Wyvern and Vulcan had become spots in the skies, the duo continuing their battle above the clouds far out of sight. And though the outer wall had mostly crumbled from the bombardment, the Augustes fortress remained mostly intact. Geist shielded the hole Wyvern had made in the structure, telekinetically raising stones in an attempt to cover it back up. Neptune, reload, said while looking at the watery arms, before turning to his teammate. Wardrobe, bring out the apocalypse suit. But it's too dangerous. Wardrobe protested. If you don't use it, he will sink us all. Wardrobe inhaled, her costume shifting while Ryan and Len prepared to make their final stand, back to back. The sound of a gunshot echoed across the battlefield, and Wardrobe collapsed. For a second, time seemed to freeze, and Ryan had nothing to do with it. The heroine's body hit the ground while a shocked Reload watched, a figure having phased out of the ground right behind them. Good grief, Mortimer said without any remorse, the tip of his rifle still fuming. Looks like Mortimer won the bet. Well, Ryan had to admit it. No matter how savage the attack, it had been a perfect sneak headshot. Wardrobe probably didn't feel any pain. Wardrobe! Reload shouted in panic, dropping everything to try and treat his teammate's wound. It was in vain though. The courier had seen the bullet go from one side of the head to the other, and unless she had regeneration, the shot had slain her instantly. The yellow genome's blood was flowing out of her skull and onto the ground, while flowers burned around them. Mortimer thought she would never shut up, the hitman said without any remorse, keeping his rifle pointed at Reload's head without pressing the trigger. In all likelihood, he had grown wise to his rewinding power. You. While Ryan wasn't surprised, Len struggled to find her words. You killed her. You killed her. You could have shot her in the knee. Ryan said, quite pissed himself. While he didn't know the girl until a few hours earlier, she seemed quite the theatrical superhero. She was long-term rivalry material. She was fun, god damn it. Fun. She would have recovered from a knee shot, Mortimer replied with a shrug. For a second, Ryan had forgotten he was a brutal mob hitman beneath all the silliness. With one exception, Mortimer hasn't seen anyone recover from murderer. Reload snarled suddenly, charging at Mortimer with his weapon raised. The hitman quickly took a step backward to dodge. You'll pay for this. Len raised her water weapon at the Dynamis hero, hitting him with a stream of liquid. He dropped his laser blade in surprise, perhaps having been blinded by anger. Instead of propelling Reload backward though or cutting him in half, the water shifted around the hero and formed a dense, 3 meters wide bubble around his body. When Shorty closed her water pump, the bubble stabilized and kept Reload immobilized. Thanks, Mortimer said, before grabbing Reload's laser blade as a trophy. How long will it last? Shorty didn't answer. She didn't want to. She can't talk? Mortimer asked Ryan, who deactivated the laser blade and put it in a belt pocket. Yes she can, but not to you, the courier said. Also, you're a jackass. Hey, she was a corpo, why do you care? She was my new archenemy, Mortimer. Ryan said, raising a finger at the man's mask. You don't kill a man's archenemy. It's like stealing his wife. Oh, really? Sorry, poor old Mortimer is quite the law killer. Mortimer liked his comedy pitch black, like his soul. Unfortunately for him, Len didn't find the joke funny, and instantly raised her weapon at his face. Hey, calm down. The hitman protested, pointing his rifle back at Shorty. What's up with you? I should have let him kill you, Len said, clearly struggling against her instinct not to bubble the hitman to death. You're just as bad as the meta. Len. Ryan turned serious, putting a hand on his friend's shoulder. It's not worth the hassle. If she attacked him, then they would have the entire Auguste family after them. Ryan could handle them, but Len didn't need that trouble right now. The aquatic genius remained still for a few seconds, before lowering her weapon. Anyway, you're the underdiver, right? Mortimer asked while appraising Len warily. Unlike her, He hadn't lowered his rifle. "Miss Livia said you were in charge of the evacuation effort." "I called bathyspheres already," Len finally spoke up, her tone icy. "Vulcan must have paid her to keep a few in standby as escape pods." "Good, I was in charge of clearing the way and then getting our VIPs out," Mortimer said, slowly sinking back into the ground. "I will be back soon." "You want to evacuate?" Ryan asked, pointing at Neptune repelling Dynamis Air Forces. "We're sort of winning." "Bite me, Miss Livia's orders," Mortimer said while disappearing, "and you don't argue with the money." Once he was gone, Ryan glanced at Reload's watery prison, the violet genome trapped in a bubble he couldn't escape from. His power restored him to his physical prime whenever he ran out of breath but never granted him the strength to escape. "Does it pop out if I stick a nail in it?" "That's all you have to say, Rory?" Len looked at Wardrobe's body, and though Ryan couldn't see the face beneath her helmet, he didn't have to be a precog to sense his friend's sorrow. "He murdered her." "Yeah." Ryan moved towards Wardrobe's body, closing the eyes. "She deserved at least as much." "That happens." "She wasn't a meta, Rory." "She was. She didn't even use lethal force on you. How can you be so casual about it?" "I told you," Ryan replied with a sigh. "You get used to everything." "That's the saddest thing I heard you say yet," Len said. "Rory, you can't. You can't become numb to this. If you let it stick to you, it just gets overwhelming after a while." She had no good answer to this. I'm doing this for you, Rory. To pay you back. But that's it. When this is over, I'm done with these drug dealers." "Yeah." It reminded Ryan of that previous loop where he watched Jamie and Co all perish before him. "I can make it right," he said, almost absent-mindedly. "It's just temporary." "At what cost?" Len asked him, shaking her helmet. Don't what, save people? You don't owe these people anything. That mindset of yours, it's destroying you," she protested, before looking at Wardrobe's remains. "I tried to save everyone who deserved to, but I couldn't. I could only help a few. But the difference between them was, Ryan could save everyone who deserved it. If he tried enough times." Len must have telepathy because she seemed to have guessed his trail of thoughts. "When this is over, let's go away." "Away from what?" "Away from this cursed city," she said, all but pleading. "It will destroy us both. Maybe even kill us." "Wait, Shorty, does that mean you want me back in your life after all?" Ryan teased her. "No more radio exchanges?" She remained silent for a moment, with the courier wondering if he had been too bold, too soon. "Yes," Len finally said, after some hesitations. It won't be easy, but yes. I don't think I ever wanted you out of my life." Ryan remained silent, as his oldest friend struggled to find her words. "I don't think I would have checked up on you for years, if it was truly over between us," Len admitted, flinching as an explosion echoed nearby. Neptune had knocked out one of the last helicopters from the skies. "I'm sorry. I'm not good at this." It's okay. They would have time to get comfortable in each other's presence once again. If anything, this loop had been worth it just to reach this point. "It means the world to me, but you know I can't go right now." "What about Rust Town?" Ryan needed to use vaguer terms, in case anyone listened. "Tremors," Len said. "I think they are digging below it." Ryan had seen enough bad endings through his long life to tell where this was going. He grabbed his phone and tried to call Vulcan, unable to see her in the skies. "James." "Jasmine?" "Nothing but static." "Shorty, do you have good phone coverage?" "Someone is scrambling vocal communications," Len said, while 5 bathyspheres emerged from the seawater nearby, their doors opening automatically. "Dynamis, I think." As if on cue, Mortimer emerged from the ground, holding both Livia and Narcinea with his naked hands. It seemed he could apply his intangibility to others as long as they remained in physical contact. While Narcinea was clearly shaken, folding her arms and looking at the ground the second Mortimer released her, Livia managed to keep her composure. At least, until she noticed Wardrobe's remains. "You killed her, Mortimer?" "I shouldn't have?" the hitman asked. "Now it will be a total war," Livia replied, shaking her head. "Hector cannot back down after this. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's the spark. My garden." Narcinia lamented, looking at flames consuming her flowers. I wanted to show it to everyone." "You will make another," Livia told the younger girl, before barking orders at Len. "Under Diver, we start evacuating immediately. Mortimer, you will go back inside, bring Bacchus and Sparrow." "Should we evacuate at all?" Mortimer asked, glancing at the fortress behind them. Geist had managed to close the hole, and the Dynamis genome seemed to have started bailing out. "I mean, it's crappy, but it's our turf." "I keep dying," Livia replied, a look of brief concern breaking through her tranquil expression. "My alternate selves. Their life is snuffed out in an instant, and I can barely see the cause. I assume Dynamis has a secret weapon, and they will likely unleash it on the island. Perhaps a nuke." Len looked at Ryan. "Not me," he protested, before adding a caveat, "this time." Mortimer immediately phased through the ground once more, while Len assigned a bathysphere to everyone. "Rary, you go first," she said, all but shoving him inside. "Rary?" Narcinia frowned at Len. "Are you two?" "It's complicated," Ryan said, sitting inside the bathysphere. It was a larger variant of the one Shorty used for delivery runs, optimized to hold multiple people inside. He sat on a crimson, semicircular bench, and immediately noticed seat belts. The bathysphere was equipped with multiple screens and buttons, and even included what appeared to be an infirmary stock for emergencies. "I'm disappointed by the absence of sickles and hammers." "Narcinia, move in," Livia said with a rush, pushing the younger girl to move inside. The Augusti princess stopped midway, a strained frown on her face. I don't understand." "Livia?" Narcinia asked, stopping with one foot inside the bathysphere, and another out. "Livia, you're all right?" "I don't get it," the Augusti princess said. "It's all bright and then dark." Livia suddenly took a step back, a sharp, translucent blade grazing her cheek and drawing blood. Narcinia let out a scream as an invisible force pulled her backward and out of the bathysphere. Almost on instinct, Ryan froze time and peeked outside the bathysphere. Narcinia floated 6 meters above the ground, held by an invisible force. Ryan could see the hint of a hand covering her mouth, and he immediately guessed who was responsible. He had probably stalked the courier and watched the battle from afar, waiting for an opportunity to strike. When time resumed, Len raised her water weapon at the skies, trying to locate the invisible genome. Glass shards emerged from the sea, surrounding the group and bathyspheres like a flock of flying knives. "So it's true." A voice came out of nowhere, but Ryan instantly recognized it as Shroud's. "Assassination attempts will always fail. Did Felix send you, Matthias?" Livia asked, her face unreadable while she looked up at Narcinia. Clearly, she could see Mr. Windshield perfectly fine. "You appear together a lot when I look at you. Let's just say we share a few moral sensibilities, especially as far as fighting vermin is concerned." Shroud dropped the invisibility, carrying Narcinia above the ground while keeping a hand on her mouth. If she couldn't draw blood, the green genome couldn't use her ability. A power that could have helped the world, as her mother wished. "And your father uses it to poison innocent people. You disgust me." Livia's iron glare faltered briefly, a brief look of remorse flashing on her face. "Start by giving me back my mother," the Augusti princess said as she regained her composure, her face harshening again. "Then we will talk about morality. Now, tell your master to show himself." "Leo isn't here," Shroud replied, glass shards threateningly raised at everyone present, Ryan included. Though the carnival assassin and handsome courier worked on the same team, he seemed determined to pretend otherwise. "But he will settle the score." "Lies," Livia replied, her frown deepening. "If it's not Hargraves, then was. Did the skies clear up lately?" The sun seemed to shine brighter for a second. Ryan raised his eyes at the heavens, watching in amazement as a pillar of bright light fell from the skies, like judgment from above. He almost didn't notice Len's hand pushing him back into the bathysphere on instinct, while Olivia looked at the skies with panic. Ryan felt something in the back of his skull, and fishes looked at him from outside the window. Ryan blinked, glancing around in confusion. He was sitting alone on the bathysphere's bench, seatbelt on and laser blade deactivated. The escape pod had clearly fled under the sea, and all he could see through the porthole were dark waters and swimming sea animals. His enhanced sense of timing told Ryan time had moved forward without him noticing, but he couldn't explain why. Olivia's doing? He didn't know her power's limits, but this feeling. It reminded him of acid rain triggering her power. A violet power, not a blue. Wait. Vulcan said that Augustus gained 2 powers with no side effects through a genetic quirk. How could they know that? Unless. Questions for later. Shorty? Ryan asked, trying to make sense out of the bathysphere's buttons. Len? Len? Len, answer me. Warning, fallback point compromised. Len's pre-recorded message came out of the intercom. Bathysphere rerouted to Rust Town. Please sit until the door opens. No answer. That device probably used an automatic pilot of some kind. Still, the screens showed a GPS map of New Rome, alongside the bathysphere's rough position. He would reach Rust Town quite soon. However, a large part of the map had turned red, including Ischia Island. A chill moving through his spine, Ryan undid the seat belt and looked through the porthole as the bathysphere ascended towards the surface. But as the escape pod emerged from the Mediterranean Sea's depths, the courier saw a vision straight out of Dante's Inferno. New Rome was on fire. Flames consumed the city, devastating the harbor, the strip, the entire coast. Buildings had collapsed or been incinerated. A firestorm had taken over the highway leading into New Rome itself, with columns of smoke reaching as far as the clouds. Mount Augustus had crumbled, the proud hill now a fuming crater. What the? Ryan muttered to himself, at a loss of words. The skies brightened again, and a pillar of light fell upon New Rome. Ryan had to put a hand on his eyes to protect himself from the radiance, but he saw it hit Dynamis HQ and Illinois Migliori's tower in the distance. The following shockwave made the bathysphere shake, even if the device was kilometers away from the impact point. When at long last the bright light subsided, nothing remained of Dynamis twin towers. Nothing but flames and ashes. Len, Ryan turned to the control panel, desperately trying to find anyone to speak to. Len, answer me? Len? Len? Jasmine, anyone? Is anyone listening? No answers. How could it be? Had Leo the Living Son hit the city earlier than expected and gone completely mad? Augustus could probably do that much damage too, but why attack his own seat of power? Ryan's eyes widened, as it all fell into place. Orbital Communications Center. One of the rooms inside the bunker. Mekran had designed orbital weapons. If one of his toys remained in the dark reaches of space, a Damocles sword waiting for someone foolish enough to make it fall. As he looked at the devastation, Ryan couldn't help but wonder how many people did it take? Without Seshok to supply them with cannon fodder and with Dynamis turning on him, Adam must have thrown his own men into the meat grinder. And through sheer desperation, he had succeeded. Ryan had waited too long. The Meta had unlocked Mekran's bunker. When the bathysphere reached the shore, it stopped at the only place which the Meta gang hadn't opened fire on yet, their own turf. Ryan walked the streets of Rust Town, people fleeing the neighborhood in panic on the other side of the road. The toxic atmosphere, already terrible, was now saturated with smoke and ashes. Without his mask on, the courier might have coughed every minute. The locals were so terrified of the orbital bombardment, that they trampled on other people while trying to escape. Another pillar of light hit New Rome's south, illuminating the skies and causing a mini-earthquake. A building crumbled at Ryan's left, forcing him to use a time stop to avoid falling stones and glass shards. He kept going through the chaos until he reached his destination. The junkyard. Before going to this cursed place, the courier had tried to contact Well, everyone. But he received no answer but static when he used his phone. Either the orbital laser had damaged underground cables and other methods of communications, or there was nobody left to answer him. And when he had looked at Ischia Island from the coast, Ryan only saw flames and smoke. Ryan had seen the worst hells the post-apocalyptic Earth had to offer across his travels. Irradiated cities, mutant-infested ruins, Monaco, and stuff straight out of H.R. Geiger's worst nightmares. But none had hit him as hard as New Rome's current state. The courier had found this bad ending, and it was all his fault. He shouldn't have waited for Leo's carnival to arrive in town, nor left the bunker in the Meta's hands. Even Augustus would have been more responsible than Adam with his technology. The courier might not have pulled the trigger, but he left the gun for anyone to find. Ryan was alone now, just like when he lost Len the first time. Except for all he knew, she probably died on that island. Died saving him. He would have to go back in time. He couldn't continue after this. All Ryan could do now was clean up the trash. As he walked inside the junkyard's ruins, Ryan started to hear music. An Indie tune, sung by none other than Big Fat Adam himself. Only Ruts watched as the courier made his way through molten trash hills. In preparation for the confrontation, Ryan had rigged a bomb hidden beneath his suit alongside his other ultimate weapon, to explode on command. It would make him reload should Adam have one last trick up his sleeve. Thankfully, he always kept a dose of rampage on himself, and so juiced himself up for the big finish. One way or another, this run would end soon. The scene that awaited the time traveler at the junkyard's center was almost surreal, even by his standards. A mighty, technologically advanced communication tower had sprung from the ground, close to the bunker's entrance. The device reminded Ryan of a black obelisk, albeit one covered with antennas pointed at the sky. And the Metagang were partying in its shadow. They had cleared the trash around it to form a wide area of ground on which to stand, half the size of a soccer field. After all that happened during this loop, only 5 of the psychos had survived to its final conclusion: Big Fat Adam, Frank the Mad, Acid Rain, Siren, and a 5th soon-to-be-dead maniac. And instead of securing the area, the group had decided to hold a music jam. Acid Rain and Siren were playing guitars, Frank was at the bass, Adam sang with a mic. Ryan recognized the 5th one as the land's rumored true form, which Jasmine had briefed him on. He could have mistaken the deformed creature for a parody of Area 51 aliens, a misshapen, mouthless humanoid with baby-like short legs and a humongous, hairless head. Unlike its softer gray-skinned cousins, the psycho seemed almost entirely made of solid dirt, with her eyes glowing yellow. Holding a rock concert while the city burned? Typical psychos. But worst of all, Adam looked happy. Blissfully happy, even as smoke and firestorms filled the skies. This scene summed up the Metagang in a nutshell. You should have named yourself Big Nero, Wally, Ryan taunted him as he revealed himself, laser blade in his right hand and a sharp edge to his wit. That would have been more appropriate. Though I would have suggested a fiddle. The music stopped, as Ryan leaped onto the open field and faced the Meta. The land immediately reacted by mentally lifting dirt below her, forming a platform to fly on. Perhaps her geokinetic power was inversely proportional to her range, and fusing with an area came at the cost of precision. A thief. Acid Rain snarled, throwing away her guitar and drawing a knife. I got him open. Behind me, Mr. President. Frank the Mad declared, rising from behind the base and tossing it out of his way. The 3-meter-and-a-half tall titan prepared to smash the courier like an egg. Adam raised a hand, stopping his teammates dead in their tracks. Come on, honey fat Lecter said with a cheerful grin, eyeing Ryan with amusement. His soft human skin quickly turned to a shell of hardened carbon. It's Cesare. He's almost part of the family. And soon I will be an orphan, Ryan replied with venom. His eyes trailed to the tower behind the group. The Meta must have caused the tremors Len sensed beforehand by unearthing it. Wait, he is alone? Siren asked the land, who raised her tiny arms in confirmation. Wow, it's true what they say. Some folks are just too dumb to live. Don't worry about that, Miss Flatulence, Ryan replied, stretching his limbs. You won't live past the next 10 minutes. And here I thought you came to listen to our performance, Adam said with mock sadness. It's Franz Ferdinand's This Fire, mate. One of the last songs the band recorded before the wars. Still, call me surprised. A full blast on that island and you lived. They don't make doomsday weapons like they used to. So, you were targeting me personally? Ryan asked. I'm honored you thought you needed a Mecran-made WMD to take me out. Must have been hard to see me with a punch that big. You and the Precog princess. When things started to go sour, I tried to look for the cause, and your name came up a lot. Adam raised his fingers as if to count. First you got Gul, then you put Sishok 6 feet under the only way he could ever be. Then the land tells me you convinced Augustus goons to give pursuit instead of letting us skip town. That's an awful lot of coincidences, mate. I think you knew exactly what we came in town for, and tried to beat us to the prize. What can I say? Ryan shrugged his shoulders. I'm a cheat. Did you see the name Cesare in the Dynamis files? Because it looks like you sent them a pretty nasty severance package. Their elixir supply and resources were useful. Until they weren't. Adam dropped his mic and adjusted his clothes. There's a whole juice lab down there, mate. Advanced enough to make knockoffs of our own. For my men, that's all that matters. But not for you, Ryan noticed. Before I kick your whale ass and make sure this horrible moment never happens again, you're going to answer one question. Because I truly want to know. A last request? The media straightened around Adam and tossed away their instruments, like a hyena pack waiting for the signal to attack. Do tell, I'm in the mood to honor it. Why? Ryan asked, pointing at the burning city. Why? Adam chuckled. Actually, mate, he said, a savage grin on his face. This is all your fault. Ryan's fingers tightened around the laser blade. My fault? Your fault. See, I've been juicing up on elixirs for almost 15 years. You know the drill. My genetic code degrades, causing cellular degeneration, shortening telomeres, mental instability, tumors, etc. Until I take a shot and become healthy again. For a while, I was happy that way. Until I noticed a tiny problem. Adam raised his thumb and index finger, keeping them straight and close to one another without touching. My powers are starting to go, let's say, haywire. I guess the elixirs can't heal everything, you know. Bugs slip through. You're going to die. Having studied their condition, Ryan knew very well that the elixir psychos consumed were just delaying the inevitable. Good. Yeah, well, I came to this place because I thought I could find a cure. But now that you killed Sishok, we can't fully hijack Mecran's central mainframe. We could only settle on partial control. Adam shrugged, though the dangerous glint in his eye betrayed his true feelings. Thanks for ruining everything, boyo. You're welcome. I did my best. Well, looks like you messed up pretty bad then. Because partial control meant we could get our hands on that big interstellar thorestic. And it got me thinking. Adam looked into Ryan's eyes, and for a second, the courier saw it all. All the sociopathic, solipsistic narcissism lurking beneath the friendly facade. The savage beast wearing the human skin. I'm going to die, but you people. Adam's sneer turned into one of pure hatred. You will continue to live your miserable, meaningless lives as if I never existed. That's fucking selfish, mate. So I figured, pharaohs and kings, they were entombed with their slaves. That's just the way things are. If I have to go, then my sent-off party will set the whole place on fire. Jonestown. It was Jonestown all over again. That's your motive? In all of his endless wanderings, Ryan had never hated someone as much as this heartless, psychopathic prick. All this pain and sorrow, just because you wanted to pull off a Jim Jones? What can I say, mate? Adam shrugged it off with a cold, cruel smirk. Life ain't about winning or losing. It's about being happy. And the truth is, I don't want anybody to be happy without me. Ryan flinched, these words a cruel perversion of his own philosophy. Anyway, Cesare. Adam cracked his knuckles, while acid rain played with her knife. Poisonous rain clouds appeared in the skies above them. "I know all about your sister's underwater base. And all the little children inside." The ogre's grin turned savage. "I guess I will have fried fish for dinner." Ryan stopped time and went straight for the kill. Obviously, acid rain immediately teleported away before his ability took effect, but Ryan anticipated as much. Running straight at Henny Fat Lecter, the courier grabbed the plushie hidden inside his suit, flipped the switch, and tossed it into the melee. When time resumed, Ryan had closed the gap with Adam, getting past his goons to leap on the meta leader's chest. The madman could barely flinch in surprise before the courier sliced his face horizontally, targeting the eyes. The madman let out a scream of pain and surprise, before attempting to grab Ryan with his bare hands. Thanks to his enhanced sense of timing and rampage-boosted body, the courier fled out of range, before dodging a mighty punch from Frank the Mad. The giant's fist smashed the ground with enough force to create a small crater, the entire area shaking from the impact. Unfortunately, acid rain immediately teleported to Ryan's left and stabbed him in the flank with a knife. Only the courier's rampage-boosted reflexes allowed him to leap away and avoid a follow-up strike to the throat. Blood dripped from his flank, but the performance enhancer dulled the sharp pain. "My eyes!" Adam snarled, covering his wound. As Ryan expected, the madman's power only covered his skin, like an outer shell of diamond scales. But one couldn't see with eyes of hardened carbon. Still standing atop a flying platform, the land mentally caused stones to rise from the ground in the form of sharp spikes, forcing Ryan to stay on the defensive. Though he leaped around to dodge the stone traps, Frank the Mad began pursuing the courier with astonishing speed. Unlike the frail courier, he simply smashed through the land's spikes. Siren, meanwhile, had floated atop a molten trash pile to gain the high ground. Acid droplets had started falling in a faint rain, damaging Ryan's cashmere suit. And the plushie had awoken, looking around with curious eyes. "An angel," Acid Rain said upon noticing the rabbit, so amazed by its terrible cuteness that she stopped her assault on Ryan. "It's an angel. The other kind," Ryan replied while running circles around Frank. Thankfully, while the Colossus had speed and range thanks to his size, it was much easier to dodge his attacks in an open space than the bunker's narrow corridors. "Rabbit." The plushie raised its ears, listening to him intently. Ryan pointed a finger at Acid Rain. "Attack." "Happy birthday." The plushie leaped at Acid Rain with astonishing speed, hungry for blood. The maniacal psycho realized the danger and quickly teleported away. Unfortunately for her, no sooner did she reappear above a pile of trash that the plushie started climbing it. "Let's hug." Once the beast was unleashed, none could escape it. While Acid Rain teleported out of sight and the plushie pursued her across the junkyard, the blinded Adam recovered from his wound to go on the offensive. His mouth widened like a pelican's, enough that the madman could shove an arm down his throat. He brought a long spiked chain out of his own stomach, swinging it with both hands. "We fight to the death, mate?" Adam asked, with a mix of gleeful savagery and fury. Somehow, he managed to pinpoint Ryan's position even without his eyes. Perhaps he had an enhanced sense of smell or hearing. "Yours first," Ryan replied, cutting a stone spike with his laser blade as it threatened to impale him. The courier might have said a joke under other circumstances, but he was through playing. He just wanted these monsters dead. Texas Smash. Frank the Mad relentlessly continued his pursuit, attempting to bull rush the courier. The ground trembled with his steps, Ryan narrowly managing to sidestep to the left before the impact. Instead, the Colossus hit a nearby pile of molten trash, metallic garbage absorbed in the Colossus body. When he recovered, Frank had grown half a meter taller. As Ryan suspected, the psycho could absorb metals to increase his mass and his range. He had to kill the weaker meta first, to make the stronger ones more manageable. "Let's see you dodge this." Siren unleashed a blast of air from her high point, while Adam and Frank converged on Ryan from both sides. The courier stopped time, moving between the various obstacles. Keeping Frank and Adam for last, Ryan instead rushed at the tower and the land defending it. The courier grabbed a grenade from under his suit and tossed it at both. The projectile exploded when time resumed, the blowback blasting the land off her platform and sending the silent Psycho to the ground. But though Mekran's tower trembled, it didn't break. Crimson force fields automatically appeared to shield it from damage. Though disappointed, Ryan settled for a consolation prize. Like a hawk falling on a mouse, he cut the land in half below the waist with Reload's blade before she could recover. The creature made no sound and didn't shed blood. Instead, both halves fell off the ground without any reaction. Was she even alive? Ryan didn't have time to ask himself questions, as Adam was instantly upon him. The cannibal maniac moved with cat-like grace in spite of his enormous size, his spike chain surging through the air like a swift serpent. The courier had to stop time to dodge and notice Saren ready to attack from her rookery. Grabbing a small gun inside his back pocket, Ryan shot her repeatedly in the face in the frozen time. When the clock moved again, Saren's head exploded into gas, vaporous fumes escaping from her hazmat suit. Ryan also noticed that Acid Rain's toxic clouds had moved north, perhaps to escape her pursuer. Changing his strategy from close combat to ranged attacks, Frank the Mad grabbed his base and tossed it at Ryan as easily as a frisbee. Ryan managed to leap to the side while the projectile crashed behind him, only to almost stumble. The courier glanced at his left foot, finding it encased in a shell of stone. The land's upper half was crawling at him with her arms, her hateful eyes glowing yellow. Exploiting his distraction and the time stop's cooldown, Adam caught Ryan's right arm with his chain, the spikes tearing at his flesh. Though he had grown almost numb to any form of pain, the time traveler had to keep his teeth clenched, as the two psychos pulled him in opposing directions. The spikes tore through his hand's muscle, making him drop his lightsaber. Damn, if this continued, they might tear his whole arm off. On second thought, mate, I won't kill you. Adam opened his mouth again and spat out a new item from his gullet. A syringe full of an azure blue liquid, and bearing a familiar helix symbol. An elixir. Oh God, no. Anything but that. I'm going to destroy you, Adam said with a laugh, raising the potion like a knife with one hand and holding the chain with the other. You know what they say. Like father, like son. Ryan shouted the safe word. Jar Jar B. He didn't finish his sentence. A crimson sphere hit Adam's chain and melted its links, while the surprised Psycho took an anti-tank shell to the face. The blast propelled the invulnerable maniac against the tower's force field, while the elixir shattered on the ground. Mr. President. Frank the Mad immediately attempted to rush at his leader's side, only for an enormous shape to fall upon him from the skies. The impact blew dust in all directions, Ryan only able to see a winged shape pinning the colossal Psycho to the ground, two giants trading blows. Meanwhile, a horde of rats emerged from the junkyard and immediately fell upon the bisected land, burying her beneath their swarming mass. Ryan glanced at the spot where Saren used to stand, noticing Lanka and Jamie in civilian clothing in her place. They looked like shit, their face covered with ashes and minor wounds, but the courier had never been so relieved to see them at all. And of course, she was there. Her mech landed right behind Ryan, battered, dented, but still ready to take names. You made me keep your fucking cat, Ryan. Vulcan declared, raising her cannon at Adam. You aren't dying before I kill you. Ryan had to admit it, being the damsel in distress was a nice change of pace. Usually, he was the one doing the rescuing. But it wasn't very relaxing, for the junkyard had erupted into complete chaos. An increasingly taller Frank traded blows with Wyvern in dragon form, the colossal reptile pushing her opponent against a pile of molten trash. For every hit the superheroine inflicted, the Psycho seemed to gain additional height. However, Lanka sniped him with white-colored spheres from her vantage point, shrinking Frank and keeping his size manageable. Was she Cancel's lost sister or something? You teamed up with Wyvern? Ryan asked Jasmine, astonished. Temporarily, Vulcan replied, unleashing a volley of bullets at Adam. While the Psycho's carbon skin shrugged off the projectiles, the repeated shock prevented him from moving forward. Very temporarily. You could tell the situation was bad when those two set aside their differences. Having devoured the land and left nothing behind, Chitter's rats moved on to Adam, but the Metis leader proved to be a harder meal. He stomped on the rodents, turning them into blood smears on the ground. Even when they tried to bury him under their weight, his enhanced strength allowed him to shrug them off. Exploiting the distraction, Ryan grabbed a knife with his unwounded arm and managed to free his leg from the land's dirt binding with it. Meanwhile, Jamie, showing his badass samurai credentials, jumped off his rookery and created a sort of red light mid-flight. Swinging his blade during the descent, he cut through Frank's back as easily as butter, leaving a scar around the waist. Unfortunately, the psycho's metal body quickly regenerated from the wound, and while Lanka slowed down his exponential growth, she couldn't stop it. Frank would reach 8 meters in height soon. "Anything that can take down the communication tower?" Ryan asked Jasmine, needing to shout to be heard over the sound of gunfire. "I mean, their gun is bigger than yours, no offense. I wasted most of my good stuff on the reptile over there," Vulcan replied with frustration, quickly running out of ammo. Without suppressing fire, Adam was now free to move and brought out a warhammer from his gullet. "Cover me while I reload." To give himself more time to think and plan, Ryan activated his power. The world turned violet, the courier looking under his suit with his left arm. He couldn't feel the right one, Adam's chain having shredded its key muscles. Could a Desert Eagle be powerful enough? A higher caliber gun So you were the source of these anomalies. Ryan flinched, before looking up to the skies. A man of ivory floated above the junkyard, shrouded in a blinding electric aura. Powerful streams of whitened winds came from his feet, allowing him to hover above the ground. He alone moved in the frozen time, standing above and looking down on the humans below. Electrohydrodynamics. He used electrical charges to ionize air molecules and allow himself to fly. "I was starting to wonder," said Augustus, carrying a half-burned corpse in his hand. From the clothes, Ryan recognized it as acid rains. He would make a powerful Saturn. Time resumed, and Lightning Butt focused on the other people present. The moment Augustus came into view, everyone stopped moving. Even the blinded Adam seemed to have sensed his presence. The Lightning Emperor's mere presence, and the sheer electrical tension coming from his person, cowed everyone present into silence. "You failed," Augustus told Adam, tossing Acid Rain's corpse on the ground below like a piece of trash. "Even Hargrave's flames could not warm me. You thought this feeble light could kill me? You thought that anything could kill me?" To his credit, Adam quickly recovered from his surprise. "Frank, squash him." The now 8 meters tall giant immediately pushed Wyvern aside and attempted to smash Augustus with both hands, the way a man crushed a mosquito. Instead of dodging, the Lightning Emperor raised his arms and stopped the giant's hands with his own. As he did, Frank's metal skin shifted around Augustus' fingers, covering them. Even Mob Zeus looked briefly surprised by this development. It seemed Frank the Mad's metallic structure tried to digest Augustus' hands but struggled to. It reminded Ryan of a dog trying to chew a bone too hard for its teeth. But it made no difference. Augustus looked at Frank and blasted the Titan's head with a blinding lightning bolt from his eyes. The sheer power behind the blow melted the psycho's steel body, leaving a pile of molten metal where the brain should have been. Though pieces of him remained stuck to Augustus, Frank collapsed to his back. "Ryan, get down." Vulcan activated her propellers and grabbed Ryan, flying out of the giant's falling shadow. Chitter's rats fled in all directions, while Wyvern, Jamie, and Adam dispersed. Frank hit the ground and blew dust in all directions, missing the tower by an inch. He remained still, even after the dust settled. Without wasting time, Augustus gracefully landed on the ground and began to slowly walk towards Adam. Instead of cowering, the nihilistic psycho glared back at the invincible Mon. "My sister, daughter, and goddaughter died because of you." There was no word on earth to sum up the cold fury coming from Lightning Butt's mouth right now. "Their deaths were swifter than yours will ever be. I promise you a Tartarus." "Doesn't matter," Adam replied while swinging his warhammer at the invulnerable man's head. "Even if I die, I already won. You all lost. His weapon flattened on impact, while Augustus didn't even flinch. Well, it was fun while it lasted, Adam said, before outright shouting. Adam to Bahamut. Change target to current low. Augustus casually backhanded Adam in the face, tearing off his jaw and sending the carbon-made man to the ground. The Emperor then kicked the Psycho in the stomach with enough strength to make him crash against the orbital tower. While everyone looked on, too terrified to move or say anything, Lightning Butt started stomping his victim. The Psycho's hardened shell folded like aluminum under the savage beating, bones breaking, legs twisting. When at long last, Adam had become a bloody, battered mess on the ground, Augustus lowered his neck to look at his victim dead in the eyes. Any last words, vermin? Adam laughed. It wasn't a laugh of despair or madness, but the taunting cackle of a monster happy with his work. A loud, gregarious laughter of pure schadenfreude. It only enraged Mob Zeus further. At the end of the day, for all your delusions, you only bear the first man's name. Augustus raised his foot above Adam's face. While I am a god. Augustus stomped on the head with a sickening crack. Adam fell silent, drool falling off his mouth. His outside turned from carbon to scarred skin, weak and vulnerable. The Meta was still breathing, but with a nasty concussion. He might soon wish he was dead though. Soldiers, grab this piece of trash and send him to Venus. He will not die until I have him nailed to a cross on Ischia Island, his screams soothing my daughter's soul. Augustus then turned to Wyvern. We fight now? Fight over what? Wyvern regained her human form and waved a hand at the devastation around them, while Jamie and Lenka immediately rushed to tie Adam up. The ashes? Then get lost, Augustus replied, glancing at the communication tower. Now that I look at this cursed ground clearly, there is an entire crypt of metal beneath our feet. Mecran's tomb I assume. What are you going to do? Wyvern asked with a frown. Finish what Hargraves did not have the guts to. Lightning Butt's electrical aura grew brighter and stronger, his body building up energy inside itself. The courier immediately realized what the Thunder Emperor planned, and how it would ruin everything. No. Ryan pleaded, turning to Vulcan, whose face he couldn't see beneath her helmet. There's still bound to be something down there that we can use. Ryan, his girlfriend replied with a hint of finality. It's over. If we stay, we die. Augustus unleashed a lightning blast at the orbital tower, his overwhelming power short-circuiting the force fields and snapping the building in half. One half of the tower fell on the junkyard's ground with a cataclysmic shockwave. The aura around Augustus briefly vanished, revealing the human underneath, a statue of ivory, with pieces of Frank's body still stubbornly attempting to eat away his hands. Lightning Butt looked sick, his cheeks creased and his eyes sullen. But he was already recharging, and this time his aura turned brighter than ever. Vulcan grabbed Ryan in her arms and flew away, the courier too weakened by his wounded arm and blood loss to protest. Everyone evacuated in short order, Wyvern assisting Lanka and Jamie in dragging Adam away, and leaving the Lightning Emperor alone. 20 minutes later, a mighty thunderbolt hit the junkyard in a cataclysmic detonation, burying Mecran's bunker once and for all. As expected of Rampage's side effects, Ryan started throwing up everything he had eaten in the last few days once the drug wore off. With his existing wounds and a damaged arm, Jasmine had him sedated. When the courier woke up in a hospital bed, it was surrounded by his friends and a cat. Jamie sat on a chair with his girlfriend on his lap, and Jasmine was petting a white cat. Only Lanka stood on her own feet, her back against a white, featureless wall. Hello, Sleeping Beauty, Lanka mused, though her usual devil-may-care attitude had softened up a little. My, were you worried for me? Ryan asked, raising his bandaged left arm. He could actually feel pain now, which was an improvement over its previous state. Didn't anyone tell you I'm immortal? Ki-young chuckled, though her boyfriend didn't. Jamie was happy to see the handsome courier alive but clearly didn't like the joke. There. Jasmine all but dumped the white cat on her boyfriend. Now it's your turn. Schrödinger. Ryan grabbed the cat, who immediately took the courier's lap as his own throne. "You're alive." "I don't know how," Jasmine admitted. Ki-young looked at the cat with a worried gaze, clearly forcing herself to stand the feline's presence for Ryan's sake. Out of everyone at the factory, only that fucking cat made it out alive. That pet is luckier than Fortuna. "Did she make it out?" Ryan asked, before correcting himself. "Who else made it out?" "Precious few," Jamie admitted with a sorrowful face. "Fortuna and her parents were far enough away from Ground Zero to avoid being killed outright, probably thanks to her busted luck," Lanka added. "The house almost collapsed on us when the Meta targeted Mount Augustus, but we avoided incineration. Neptune survived too." "Is?" Ryan's voice died in his throat. "Is Len alive?" The group exchanged glances, while Jasmine scowled outright. "You don't need to sugarcoat it," Ryan declared, his hand tensing on Schrodinger's back. "Say the truth outright." "I expect it. Almost everyone on Ischia Island perished, either from the laser itself or the searing ashes," Jasmine said bluntly, though she was clearly crestfallen. "Only Geist lived, if you can call it that, and the few of us who were fighting outside Ground Zero. The underdiver didn't survive." Ryan said nothing for a moment. Whether it was because of the anesthesia, the tiredness, or the gnawing realization that he had completely messed up this run, he couldn't muster the strength to feel anything. "I'm sorry," Jamie apologized. "I know it's a cold comfort, but nobody could have stopped this." He meant well, but it only hurt more. "I could have," Ryan said. Once again, he had failed to protect Len from psychos. "You couldn't," Jamie insisted. "It happened in a flash, no time to think." "You're a hero, Ryan," Ki-young said. "You probably prevented Adam from firing that beam again and killing thousands." "It was completely foolish, you mean?" Jasmine snarled at Ryan. "What were you thinking, attacking them head-on?" "Hey, I tried to call for backup but nobody answered," Ryan replied. "And I thought I could pull off a Tony Montana." "Well, you did," Lanka said with a snicker. "Your own drug did more damage to your system than the Meta, from what I heard." "We're in Sorrento, south of New Rome," Jamie told Ryan. "You can still see the fires out of the windows," Lanka said, Ki-young elbowing her. "It's one of our cities, so it's safe here," Jamie reassured the courier, in an almost paternal way. "With your genome metabolism, you should recover in no time." At this point, Ryan wasn't sure if he should drag out his recovery time or put a bullet in his head right this instant. He decided to wait a little, to get a clearer picture of the situation. "What's going to happen now?" "We bury the dead," Jamie said grimly. "After that, we rebuild and we continue to move forward. That's all we can do." "I don't think now is the time to speak of it," Ki-young told her fiancé. "Yeah." Jamie rose up alongside his girlfriend. "We'll let you rest, my friend." "Lanka." Yeah, Lanka said, as the trio left Jasmine and Ryan alone. The courier heard her grumble while closing the door behind them. "Goddamn lovebirds." Vulcan waited a few seconds for the other Auguste to leave, before turning to Ryan. "You're holding up?" She tried not to sound concerned but wasn't very good at it. "You owe me one." "Unfortunately, I can only pay with my body. My money went down in ashes." Ryan's response drew a chuckle from the genius. "Is my car all right?" "No," Jasmine shook her head, mourning this beautiful device's destruction too. "Adam blew it up alongside my foundry. If Len's demise hadn't finished off Ryan, his car's murder did. The chrono radio was gone, and even if he memorized the plans for Len's device, it wouldn't work without the brain powering the Plymouth Fury. What did his car do to the Meta to deserve such bitter treatment? Besides running them over again and again? Someone knocked on the hospital room's window, the genome couple immediately looking up at it. "Hi," said Wyvern while opening the window from the other side. Ryan found the scene extraordinarily familiar. Jasmine immediately revealed a gun hidden beneath her trousers, pointing it at Wyvern's face. "Get the fuck out of here, Laura." "Jasmine, can we stop doing this?" Wyvern sighed. "Stop fighting for once? After everything that happened, Aren't you tired of it too? I come in peace. Vulcan kept her weapon raised, finger on the trigger, and then lowered it. How did we fall apart? Wyvern asked, looking down while she entered the room through the window and landed on the floor. You started it, Jasmine replied, putting the gun aside. Aren't you helping the civilians? I was, but the carnival arrived to help. Jasmine's eyes widened in alarm. Does Augustus know? Not yet, but he will soon, Wyvern said. He and Leonard can't stand each other, so I expect more fighting soon. What about Dynamis? Ryan asked. What I always feared will come to pass, Wyvern admitted. Alphonse Manada is in charge of what remains, including all the troops in Sicily, Libya, and Spain. The truce won't hold with him in command. If anything, I think he sees it as an opportunity to wipe you all out for good. There's going to be a new round of genome wars, Jasmine muttered. They are going to fight over the scraps. Yes. An awkward silence fell on the room. While he wouldn't live to see it, Henny Fat Lecter had won. He had ruined Europe for years to come. And worst of all, the plushie was still out there. This is your fault, Jasmine told Wyvern with a scowl. You hired the Meta. You planted the seeds from which this disaster grew. I didn't, Wyvern shook her head. Jasmine, I swear I didn't know. Neither did Enrique, bless his soul. If anyone is at fault, it's Hector. I would have stopped him if I had known. That's your problem, Laura. You could never pay attention. Vulcan shook her head, skeptical. Why are you here? I came to apologize, the heroine admitted, causing Jasmine to blink in surprise. I still don't understand how we went from friends to enemies, but after all that happened, I've been reevaluating my choices. I don't want to fight you again, and whatever I did that caused you pain. I wish to apologize for it. Jasmine listened without a word, different feelings changing her expression. From disbelief, to anger, to regrets. Get out, Laura, she finally said, unable to process it. Get out. I understand, Wyvern replied with a scowl, before turning to the courier. Romano, I'm not sure why you chose to join the Augusti, but what you did was very brave. There's still time for you to turn your life around, become a force of good in the world. Yeah, Ryan replied, looking at the sleeping cat on his lap. There's still time. With one last glance to Jasmine and Ryan, Wyvern flew through the windows, probably to rejoin New Rome. You knew, Jasmine said once she was gone, glaring at her boyfriend. About that Mecron bunker. That's what you were hiding. I knew Mecron kept a weapon stash below, Ryan admitted. Not that he had an orbital lasers control panel. And you didn't tell me? She snarled. Fuck, Ryan, we slept together. In my bed. It couldn't hurt to trust me a little. Jasmine, I swear. Shut up, she interrupted him, looking away. Just shut up. Schrödinger let out a cute meow as if to alleviate the tension in the air. Ryan petted him between the ears, wondering if Shub-Niggurath had also survived the devastation. Though most of his thoughts were for the orphans and Ledden's undersea base. With luck, the automated systems would provide for them, but without Shorty. All in all, this run had been a disaster. Mecron's bunker had been blown up, like his car, the chrono radio, and whatever brain-copying research Dynamis stockpiled in their HQ. His plan to transfer someone else's consciousness through time had been dashed. The courier only had one option left. His only chance to salvage something from this run, and that was Vulcan's power-enhancing armor. But would she help him after everything? He wasn't sure. At this point, he should just ask Vulcan for her gun and pull the trigger. And yet... Why are you looking at me like that? Jasmine broke the silence. I know I'm beautiful, but that's just creepy. I was thinking about what you said, Ryan said. A little trust. You knew I was hiding things, but you said nothing to Augustus or the others. Why? I wonder myself, the genius replied with a shrug. I dunno, you're smart, you're fun, and I like you. Simple as that. Like, as in present? So you still have a thing for me. Don't push it, Ryan, she replied, though he saw the edge of a smile on her lips. Yeah, I still have a little crush, and that's why I'm mad at you for your stupidity. You can only really be pissed at people you hate or care about. Ryan smiled a little, though the heart wasn't in it. Thing was, he had plenty of people he had grown to hate, but very few people to care for. He had always remained careful not to get attached to others because it only hurt more when he looped. Thing was, Vulcan had kept some of his secrets when she could have easily betrayed him. Even now, she hadn't completely written him as a lost cause. She wasn't a good person, as his dynamic loop could attest, but she wasn't all that bad either. A little trust. It had been a while since Ryan had trusted anyone except Len, because trust was a fragile thing that could easily turn into an open wound. Because it was something that once given couldn't be easily taken back. But this whole disaster happened because he couldn't trust anyone but Len with the bunker's secrets. If Ryan always did the same things all over again, then he would get the same results. Maybe it was time to change. Maybe it was time for him to change. Jasmine. What? I can time travel. Trust was a two-way street, after all,